This meeting is being recorded.
All right, guys, gonna share my screen with you. Get going. What are you guys laughing about now?
Seville's background picture.
Oh, gee. Brilliant. It's brilliant.
Seville, I'm gonna gun you later about that, by the way.
All right, you guys can hear me?
Yep.
Awesome, very cool. Don't sound super excited about that. All right, well, welcome to the Leadership Equipping Workshop call, guys, October 24th. Be the change you want to see. Excited to kind of present on this today. I think if you engage with it at any level, it's going to do something for you. That's why we do this. This is the 11th call we've done, believe it or not, which is just kind of crazy. Handful of months of doing this, and hopefully you've seen some change in your approach as a leader. You know, we're not just doing this just to do this, right? We all have plenty of things to do in the day, and obviously this is you investing in your own development as a leader, both professionally, and how can it not transform you and challenge you and change you in the area of your personal life as well. So how you show up in one place is how you show up everywhere else. I'm going to start with a quote here. But before I do, I just want to challenge you guys, be aware of how you're showing up to these calls. And by that, I mean, that's not an indictment or that's not an aggressive stance I'm taking or anything like that. I'm just asking the question, and I don't need an answer here, but just kind of internally go to a place of asking yourself the question of how are you showing up on these calls? Are you showing up in a way that you're looking to be transformed as a leader, to be developed, or is it just something you feel like you have to do? My boss is telling me I got to get on this thing. Now, again, not looking for an answer here, but I can tell you how you answer that question does figure into the equation of what you're going to take from these calls and how it's going to transform you as a leader, right? So just be aware how you show up actually figures into what you get from it. So hopefully you're coming into this ready to be teachable and to grow and really be challenged. Now, I did send out the notes ahead of time. I sent it on a rare Sunday morning. Typically would want to send those out even before that. I don't like sending those kind of things out during the weekend because I want you to focus on guest experience and with the team and just really being in front of the guests, right? But just kind of got to it a little bit later. Would like to get it to you late in the week, right before that Monday, this Monday that we would have. For this call. Again, if I send it out too early, I think it's forgotten about. If I send it out over the weekend, it's for sure going to be forgotten about. But I did send it out yesterday morning. Hopefully you've interacted a little bit with the notes. That was something on the GM call that Hannah mentioned could be very helpful. And so hopefully it is. Going to those notes, kind of looking ahead as to what we're going to talk about and really interacting with some of the questions on there. So here's a quote that I just stumbled across the other day. Nothing super excited about said quote other than just I thought it was worth mentioning. This is from John Maxwell. Many people are familiar with him. Kind of a main name in the area of business leadership, writes a lot of leadership material. And again, not a profound quote, but one worth mentioning. He had this to say about leadership. The more intentional you are about your leadership growth, the greater your potential for becoming the leader you're capable of being. Never stop learning. It's really about owning your own development, really positioning yourself to learn, to grow, to be developed, to be challenged. It's taking an extra handful of minutes before we wrap up your shift to ask those above you and even your peers, what could I do different? What could I have done better? What are you seeing that maybe I'm not seeing in my own growth, my own development? And all of that takes a level of vulnerability and transparency and really intentionality. You'll hear being intentional a lot in this conversation that we're having today. So we know the vision, right? To create leaders of integrity that believe their words and actions must be connected, leaders of moral character that compassionately lead, leaders that grow and have the humility and heart to grow others, leaders who have boundaries and responsibly fill out their spheres of authority and influence, leaders that set and hold standards of unmatched quality. Now, we talk about this vision a lot, and I'd be amiss if I didn't say that there was something wrong with this vision from the get-go, and that is a vision's great. It's a big kind of overwhelming sort of thing that we throw out there as leaders, right? And it can be something that we just talk about all the time, right? Oh, the vision, this big giant vision that we have. And this is a giant vision for the company, for us as Innovative Heights, right? We are Innovative Heights, and this is leadership development. And so it should have been paired with from the very beginning, and it wasn't, a mission. And you can use these words interchangeably, but I'm going to choose to use vision as this is overall what we want to accomplish, but here's the mission. Mission is how we get there, right? AKA how we get there. So this is something we look to do and some changes we need to make with ourselves if we're going to accomplish the overall vision. And here's the mission. To be leaders with integrity, we must routinely look to what we've said and what we're doing, right? That's integrity. We must not view those we lead as resources, but be intentional about connecting, relating with them as a part of our ongoing success story. We realize as leaders that we can't give what we don't have. And so we must be lifelong learners who seek to grow, aspire, and share our beliefs, standards, and love for what we do through words and actions. So that's the mission, and that's how we get there. That's the way we need to position ourselves as leaders. So, icebreaker for you guys. I asked this in the actual worksheet. If you saw this, if you didn't, then this is your first time looking at it. Not a fun break the ice type thing, but time is of the essence, and I just kind of want to get into the nitty gritty. What is a favorite leadership quote of yours? You can put it in the chat or respond with the open mic here. I would love that, actually. I'd like to hear other people other than just myself, believe it or not. But what is a favorite leadership quote of yours? Might have been something you've said or you grabbed hold of from someone else. But if you're willing to share that, that would be great. What's a favorite leadership quote of yours? And you can add it in the chat or just unmute yourself and throw it out there.
What's yours, Aaron? Can you type in? Oh.
What was that? So it's easier to get to greatness than it is to maintain it. Yes. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. I've heard that a time or two. Eat often. I've actually heard that while eating breakfast, cereal that is, with the man who says this. Okay. Aaron is sharing the quote on his phone. I'll incognito, but we're watching.
If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader.
Yep. Awesome. I've heard that one. Seville, no shave Monday. You have one. The very essence of leadership is that you have to have vision. There you go. You can't blow and uncertain trumps.
I think it was back on Seville.
Okay. May I ask, what does that mean to you, Seville?
I think it just means like if you're trying to lead somebody someplace, you have to kind of know what direction you're trying to go in. So just stepping into some place and being like, oh, I'm the boss or whatever, like that's not leading, that's positional. You got to have that vision, know where you're taking them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's good.
To the top for Madison. That's where we're trying to get to, the top.
Absolutely. You agree with that, Krista and Stefan?
100%.
Oh, definitely. I was gonna say
Fine,
what you just said.
110%.
Good answer, guys. Good answer.
I was say what you just said, Seville, sounds like the 5 levels of leadership. So that's like you're hitting the nail right on the head.
Yeah. Awesome. So Patrick, you put what you do has far more impact than what you say. Yes. Yes. It's really good. Devin, leading a team to success means taking responsibility for each and every one of its failures. Ain't that the truth? That is what I've dubbed sort of the burden of leadership, right? There's a few burdens for sure. Anyone else? Aaron had one, but does Stephanie, you have one?
I don't think I have like an exact leadership quote that I use. I use like little tidbits of things all the time.
Okay.
Like
what about you,
recently,
right there, Erica?
Yeah. What do you got, Erica?
I don't have anything.
May I ask the question? What if you did though?
What if I did have a quote?
Yeah, what would it be? So the answer to I don't know is, but what if you did know?
If I did know, it'd probably be something like you just do unto others that have done unto you.
There you go.
The golden rule.
Love it. So you do have something. There you go. Leadership is about making others better as a result of your presence and making sure that impact lasts in your absence. All right. Love it. Love it. Wade, my dad's quote, lead, follow, or get out of my way, but just keep moving. Were you pushed over a lot, Wade?
My dad was a high D personality. He just went.
Yeah. Push and press. I can't take you serious because I just keep thinking like Seville's giving me the stink eye, but it's really just you. There, I can take you serious now. Love it. Good stuff. Awesome. Very cool. Well, we'll continue to unpack these leadership quotes, guys. Thank you for sharing that. I wish I would have gotten Ricardo's, but he left us far too early. He left us. All right. So you guys have heard me say some things before. How many people have heard me say this one? If you as a leader walk past a fallen standard, that becomes a new standard. Maybe once or twice. You heard this one?
Yep.
Come on, come on. You've heard it, right? This is an interesting picture. This is, from what I understand, historically, this was a Black Friday sale gone wrong, I guess, at a Nike outlet store. I used to work Black Friday, all that good stuff, both heading into it and heading out of it and the day of it. In the retail world, good times, not so much. Can you imagine? Look at the humanity right there on display, the ugliness of things, right? So this quote is not a quote that originates from me. It's not my quote. It's a quote that I've adopted and I've adapted to what I do every day. And so it's why I say it, because I see value in it, even when where it came from kind of lost some of its shine. And I'll explain. So some of you guys may have heard this story, but it's worth repeating. So a little bit of story time with Lance. Hopefully you can stay with me. So if you as a leader walk past a fallen standard, that becomes a new standard. I preach the standards a lot because regardless of your ability, meaning your experience, your skill, your knowledge, any combination of those three things, when it comes down to the standard being set, you just have to match that standard, that quality level. It may take you longer if you're newer at this job, but ultimately you know what it's supposed to look like. You know the park and how it's supposed to be when you wrap up the day. You know what it's supposed to look like when you walk in the next day, because there's a standard. And so every leader can hit the standard if it's known. This was actually told to me early on in my managing career. I was managing a store. I was actually a department supervisor at a giant toy retailer. I'm sure you've heard of them, Toys R Us. And this was one of my store directors who was walking with me on this racetrack area. So there was outside aisles and there's internal aisles and there's a racetrack, as we called it, that you could kind of bulk stack things down. And there was end caps at the end of these aisles. These end caps are 3 to 4 feet wide, usually had product that people had paid in advance to put their stuff on display, because it's what you see when you're just going around the racetrack. It kind of is a mainstay, a focal point for the customer, right? And I was walking with one of my newer store directors. He was a little rough around the edges. Not many people really enjoyed being around him, but he took a liking to me. And I was newer into the role, so I was just trying to glean everything I could from this guy who had been doing this for much longer than I. We were walking the racetrack and he saw an end cap that the product wasn't pulled all the way forward. And anybody who knows anything about selling, especially in the retail world, you would pull your product forward because people don't want to have to reach back to grab something, nor do they want the last of anything, right? So you pull things forward. And he said, "Lance, you see that?" And I said, no, Chris, I don't know what you're looking at. And he said, "That is a fallen standard. And if we walk past that as leaders, that becomes the new standard." Now, that didn't really rock me in the moment. I think I was just too caught up in, I should have had the answer, I should have known, right? Sort of that internal thing going on. But it stuck with me. If I'm honest, it did stick with me. I wasn't really repeating it. So Fast forward about 6 to 8 months later, and this same store director who had said that to me said it probably more than just the one time, I'm sure of it. But as we kind of related to each other in the role of store director and just employee, really just a department supervisor over about 70% of what we sold in the store, this quote would start to kind of cycle in and cycle out. Now, Chris was in a store that was performing okay, but definitely had a lot of work that we had to do for the store to really compete at the level that we wanted it to. And he started finding himself not in the equation as much. He was actually leaving the store quite a bit. And he was having me cover for him. Now, I didn't know I was covering for him. I was really none the wiser. He would just go off to this other store from time to time and just say, hey, if the district manager calls, whatever, I'm over at such and such store. Okay, fair. I'm not going to question my boss. Inevitably, what I found out was this guy, this manager of mine who had quoted this to me, was going out to another store, but not to really do the job, not to really do what was even asked of him from the DM. He was committing time theft. And he also was finding himself in a relationship with another store manager. He himself was married. The lady that he was with at the time in this other store, she was married. And so they were committing adultery and they were committing time theft, the two of them. He didn't have a job for much longer after that, right? He was doing all sorts of things he shouldn't have been doing on the job and having other people lie on his behalf, not knowing that they were lying. And so if you as a leader walk past a fallen standard, that becomes a new standard, kind of rushed up inside me because this man had said this to me. And I had a choice point, right? Do I just take what he said and throw it out like the baby with the bathwater, or embrace the truth and the realities behind this particular expression? Even more, what if the fallen standard is not just something we look at every day, like walking past a sock wrapper, but what if we as leaders, we become the standard and we ourselves as leaders fall? He was a fallen standard, he himself as a leader. Now, that impacted me, and it actually caused me to grab hold of this expression and bring new life to it and take it for what it really is. It's about leaders not walking past fallen standards and also not becoming the fallen standard. So that's the burden of leading, right? We have a burden as leaders to hold the standard and to also be the standard on our shifts, as MODs, so on and so forth. Hopefully it brings new life to the expression. It's not just a choice expression I took from somewhere. It actually means something to me because of what I went through with someone who told me this. So with that expression, what are some practical steps we can take to move from words into action, not just a trite, nicely put together expression, a quote? Well, here's some simple things you can do, because this whole conversation is really about practical steps. If all you come away with is just a bunch of theory, then we're in the 83%. The 83% that know that we need to do something, but we fail to do anything about it. This is not about theory. This is about application, right? This is about being the standard. So here's some things you can do, and this is pretty straightforward. Create a plan, however you want to go about it. Account for what you've said, then review/do routine check-ins. Really plan for it. Hold yourself accountable first and foremost. And then even create further accountability through taking on a partner, ask for feedback, right? Feedback is the breakfast of champions. Assess if you have what you need, and if not, source what you need, right? Ask for it. Be aggressive. If you don't have it, ask for it. Inquire about it. We are 9 parks strong with all sorts of individuals with strengths and weaknesses. Lean on each other and leverage our size and our scale. So those are some practical steps to get up, really just to move forward with taking words into action. Any questions on how to move words into action? All right. Sometimes when I tell that story about that former manager of mine, that kind of jars people a little bit. It's pretty on point and a little sobering. So, I gotta ask the question, where are you stressed, anxious, or frustrated? That's in the worksheet. But again, I know everybody got to it kind of late on a busy weekend. But hopefully you asked yourself this question, where are you stressed, anxious, or frustrated? Where does it feel like you're open 24 hours? By the way, we're not open 24 hours, but the online component of our business for sure is, right? SMGs, Google reviews, SMG, or I said SMGs, but just the ongoing assault of just, the online capacity of our business. But really, it can feel like 24 hours when you think of WhatsApp and emails, things like that, right? So where are you stressed, anxious, or frustrated? Feel free to add that into the chat. Or even unmute yourself. Love to hear you.
I told you a little bit earlier about just like my weekends. My weekends are super stressful just because my kids don't work Monday through Friday. So when they come in on Saturday and Sunday, like they're not in school for the first time and they haven't worked for 5 days. And so their personal standards low. So every Saturday and Sunday, it's like retraining, reteaching, recoaching over and over again. And I'm starting to see it take a toll on myself and my managers.
Yep. Yeah. No, I appreciate the share. And boy, we're going to have a good day today, Seville. So we'll unpack some of what you were telling me earlier and what you just said in front of the group here. And you got me today, right? So we'll unpack some stuff. It'll be really good.
As
What
a
else?
team, we've been talking about this actually more and more each week, feeling like we can't take the day off. We're always on. We're like going several weeks without a day off, like a real day off, and setting a plan to make that happen. So it's something we're turning the corner a little bit on, but going into last week, even it was a real issue. And just without having that, I feel like everything else kind of falls apart in a way when you don't have a break from the business. Even that mental
too much
break.
of a good thing is too much, right?
Yeah.
Let's assume it's a good thing. I believe it's a good thing. I know it's a good thing for you guys, but too much of something is too much. Absolutely. And Seville and I were talking a little bit about that, and I'm going to give him some practical things. And again, I want to respect the time frame that we have to talk on this and breaking script a little bit here. One of my last slides, which is not on here, was taking on really being intentional for anyone on the call to take on more of a mentor and mentee relationship. If that's something you feel inherently would be of value to you, reach out, connect, be intentional about your connecting with me in those areas. I can definitely help with boundary setting. In fact, we'll be talking about boundaries on this call. So, but if you want to expand beyond that, anybody, I'm not just talking to the Shelby crew, although I'm staring at you guys right now. Any of you, let's talk. We'll have a digital cup of coffee because I don't think Brian wants to fly me out to wherever, but we'll connect. Yeah, it's a big one. Yeah, you can't be running on empty and expect to fill other people up, right? What else?
Yeah, mine is along those same kind of outline that Stephanie and Seville talked about. Yeah, it's just been, the weekends are just so busy for us, and there's a lot of coaching. But the good thing that I've noticed is you see the rising to the challenge. So that there's pieces that you can work with, but I have a little bit of added stress because my wife is going in for a C-section next week. So there's done so that the team is in good hands when I have to step away for a little bit. But also, being like, man, how's it going to go? Is it, what are we going to have any issues? So that you've got the work stress and the personal stress kind of coming together, but I think I've done a pretty good job of managing it. I don't think anybody on staff really knows besides upper management that I'm going to be, that I have that going on. And I moved, and yeah, so a lot of stuff was going on at the same time. That's my stress right now. But you know, and I kind of talked about it last week on the call with like the Eagle Nest and SMG. But it always works out that when I'm starting to think or feel that way, I'll have something happens that kind of like shows you like, yeah, there's good stuff going on too. Don't get caught up on that. So like yesterday I was here and I had a guy was sitting in the fuel zone. And I walked by and he goes, "Are you the manager?" And I go, "Oh, here we go." And he goes, I go, "Yeah, I'm the manager." And he goes, "Well, I'm really disappointed that I can't hire that young man over there because he's doing such a great job." And I was like, "Oh, thank goodness. I thought this was going to be a whole different conversation." So like that kind of goes back to having those bright spots that you know you can work with. But yeah, that's kind of what Stephanie and Seville talked about.
Yeah. Well, three things for you, Devin. First of all, you appear as Cool Hand Luke every time we're engaged with one another. Like cool as a cucumber, steady Eddie, love it. That's just your natural disposition. You're not putting on a front. That's just how you are. Awesome. Also, congrats on the upcoming baby. I don't know how I didn't know this, but so you have a baby coming up here, eh? Number 2?
Number 2.
Yeah, you know, boy or girl?
Yep, girl.
Ooh, so boy at home and a girl on the way.
Yep.
That's all part of the plan, huh?
Yeah, well, not really, but that was
that's how it works.
Stressors though. I had to leave for the audit last week, and I was only going to be in for a few hours, and because I knew that was coming, and he went berserk when I went to leave, and it was the first time it killed me. He was like full on tantrum, just kept screaming, "Daddy, daddy, daddy," and I felt so bad, but he ended up being fine, but it was really tough.
That's awesome. I mean, I appreciate your honesty and just being candid. And I saw the pictures of him at Sky Zone for his first jump experience at the zone. That's pretty awesome. And the third thing I would say is whatever you need from us, let us know, right? So, you know, we're here. Other than not babysitting, I got 3 of my own. They're 12, 10, and 8, and it doesn't get easier with age. Once they get mobile, as you know, it's almost all over at that point, right? They get moving, they get grooving.
Yep.
A whole different game.
He's at that now. He's all over the place. So
yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for the shares, everyone. Appreciate that. So yeah, where are you stressed, anxious, or frustrated? This doesn't always mean these are areas that you lack what we're going to talk about here in a moment, boundaries. Sometimes you're just stressed, anxious, or frustrated because things are just frustrating. You're just stressed because you're in a place of waiting, or something you feel out of control in some area, or you really have pressing concerns, be it a health issue or a family issue or whatever it might be. So there's a lot of reasons why you might be stressed, anxious, or frustrated, but it also could be a source of where you're lacking boundaries. And I want to talk a little bit about boundaries and the importance behind them. So what are the power of boundaries, and why even address this word that I think largely the world probably doesn't see as something of value, a great thing? I don't want to talk about boundaries. And I could tell you how important they are, because I've lived out enough life now where I've lacked boundaries historically, and I've had to really work to be intentional about creating those boundaries around my time, how I present in front of others, and how I relate. And so when we look at boundaries, they do a number of things. Boundaries, they help define. And by boundaries, I mean, we could talk about boundaries between how you see your role versus someone else's role, and really knowing your role and knowing their role in the business and how you relate. They actually define, in the truest sense, a boundary is like, you know, this is my neighbor's lawn and this is my lawn. I'm not going to build a deck on their lawn, or we're probably going to have an issue. I'm sure they're not going to be happy with me, right? And so boundaries actually define. In this truest sense, it's like they define what yard is yours versus what yard is theirs, versus just boundaries being, this is my role and this is what I do in said role. They also empower, because when you have when something's properly defined, it's actually empowered just by its very nature, because it's defined in such a way it can be empowered. They can be a source of freedom. Really drawing boundaries. Don't like the fact that you have 200 WhatsApps coming through on your day off? Change something about that. Now, I'm not saying don't ever check your WhatsApp. I am saying go about it a little bit differently. And we can talk about what that looks like, but you get to choose how you're going to come at the business every single day. And we'll just make this more professional than personal because, well, we could be here for hours and I don't plan to be here for hours with you. But it can be a source of freedom when you know your boundaries. You know what's really under your jurisdiction versus what's not. They actually frame spheres of authority and influence, and it actually lowers the amount of toxicity and drama and people acting outside of what they should, right? When you actually frame up, this is what I have authority over, this is what I have really just influence over. And if you've heard me say it once, well, you probably heard me say it a dozen times. When a lot of our workplace toxicity issues and our stressors and our frustrations stem from people going outside of their role, going outside of their sphere of authority, and in an area where maybe they're trying to bring authority in an area of influence, or they're just trying to influence and nudge things along where really they should be the one of authority. And well, boundaries are good and they're right. It's good to have boundaries. It's good. It's a good and right thing. And so the power of boundaries is something that needs to be something you put in position. You have to be intentional about how you spend your time, because you don't have an infinite amount of it. And no, we're not open 24/7, even if sometimes it feels that way. Do something different about that. And if you're unsure of what to do, please phone somebody in leadership. We'll help you through it. I'll be the first to say, I'll raise my hand. I'll help you through that. Let's talk it over. Let's work it through. So here's an excellent quote. Henry Cloud, he writes a lot about boundaries. What a surprise. And he had this to say about boundaries. Boundaries are basically about providing structure, and structure is essential in building anything that thrives. So are you on empty? Are you feeling like you need to be filled up in some way? Do you feel like you can't step away from the business because if you don't, things are just going to become unraveled? Sometimes you have to play something out to its ending conclusion and go, oh, that's what it looks like if I don't engage 24/7. Chances are you can come back from it. In fact, I'll tell you, you can come back from it. It may not be pretty coming back from it, but you can step away. In fact, you need to. You need to, and you need to choose when you do that. But boundaries are basically about providing structure, and structure is essential in building anything that thrives. You need them. They're important. Got to have them. So here are some practical steps, guys, that you can take with boundaries. Are you accountable to your job description? Now, like the world would tell you, always do above and beyond even your job description. Well, I would tell you that's actually acting outside of accordance to what your job is. And it can really encroach on territory that is somebody else's to take up. Just saying. Now, you do what you're going to do ultimately, but are you accountable to your job description? Just, are you fully filling out and stewarding what's been given to you? It's an important thing. Create a sphere chart. We'll talk a little bit more about that. It's an exercise that someone who was mentoring me over the years brought me through. And it's a fun little exercise that I'll really only introduce today, and we'll have some fun with it hopefully. But it helps really further define what is yours versus what's not yours, and how do you relate to the things within your world. Recognize opportunity costs. And if you know anything about opportunity costs, to be frank, it's, I have $5 to spend and I'm going to spend it on that bagel and that coffee. And when you do, there's opportunity costs, meaning there's going to be something that you can't spend that on, right? Because you only have $5. And so sometimes it's a challenge for us to recognize the opportunity cost because we don't have boundaries set, meaning you're always giving from a place where, to be frank, it's not endless. You don't have endless energy, endless engagement, and something you love could be turned into something you really despise or even hate. Look to your surroundings. This is a big one. There's a expression known as, what's that word? It's called choice architecture, actually. Choice architecture is something as simple as you go through a buffet line, and where things are placed will be probably in large what you're going to go for first and foremost, right? It's that end cap at the store that has that product pulled forward. And so that's opportunity, or that is your, that's your surroundings. That is your choice architecture. Rearrange some things in your day. Rearrange the way you're coming at your email. Maybe it's not the first thing you do in your day because it's a bottomless pit, right? That email. And it feels like really like you're doing something with it. Oh man, I'm hitting in my email and I'm getting somewhere. But maybe you're not. And maybe that's the most productive part of your day and you're giving it over to emails. And that's important, yes. But maybe you can use your production, the most productive time for you doing something else that would actually be of greater value. Just a thought. And then look to where anxiety, stress, frustration is in terms of relationships. Then write them down. And why you should write them down? Because writing them down, you can actually see the change as it occurs. You could type it out, sure. But what's nice about writing something down is you can actually see it in its prior form as you write it down, right? Because you can see the movement and the change as it occurs over time. So again, we're not designed to go 24/7. Literally, it's not built into us. We breathe in, we breathe out. We're awake, we sleep. It's built into us to have times of rest. Outside of that, you know, people talk about multitasking. We're not even really able to do that. Multitasking doesn't really exist. Yes, highly automatic things like walking and breathing, we can do. We can do at the same time. You can walk and chew gum, right? As the expression goes. Well, most of us can. But the reality is, it's not that we multitask, we actually just task switch, which means you're always having a reduction in your ability to perform at any level because you're task switching. You're moving from one thing to the other and you're feeling like you're being productive. You're really just burning energy. You're burning time and inevitably you're going to be frustrated. You're not getting the most out of your day. So guys, building into boundaries is going to be essential as you move forward with your career with us or anywhere else for that matter. Because the world is coming at you, man. It's 24/7 more now than it ever was before, even when we shut our doors down, even when we shut down the business for the day. So any questions about boundaries? It's a big topic. Any thoughts? Anybody honestly feel like they need help with boundaries?
I very well might, as far as timing stuff goes. I want to go through all of these practical steps and actually, like before I ask for help, like I'm going to go through these practical steps and really focus on them and integrate them into my work and well, just overall life, honestly, but work life. And see, I don't know, these are just, I know they've been presented before, but they're practical.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your honesty, level of vulnerability here. Yeah, I mean, for me, one of the ones that really stuck, you know, the sphere chart's something I've used for years, and I'll get to that in a moment, but recognizing opportunity cost is huge, right? Weighing it out. When I'm giving my time here, because it's hard to see that in your day-to-day with like your running list of to-dos, that when I'm doing those 20 emails, what is that taking away from some other areas that maybe I could actually gain ground in? And I'm using email and I'm beating up on WhatsApp. Those are all viable, important communication tools. Don't get me wrong. But again, what can you do on your end to own some of that maybe differently and shape your day to be more to your advantage, really, right? There's a lot more choice in this than what we probably give ourselves credit for, right? So those are the practical steps. Appreciate the honesty there. I'm telling you, it's all about boundaries. That's a huge learning. If you can get down boundaries, woo. And if you think you have an issue with not having boundaries or it's blurry or whatever, you do. So there's just that little bit too. All right, moving on to sphere chart. So, and I'm aware of the time. You are here, guys. How do you know if it's an area primarily of influence? Just kind of going back to what we talked about before. Influential areas in leaders, largely influence, yes, and leaders have authority, so you do both. But an area of influence is an area that you have a say in, but you don't have the final say typically, right? Just you being you in that surrounding impacts. Sometimes it's something you said, sometimes it's just an action. Maybe it's words and actions, but it's influence. How do you know if it's an area primarily of authority? You are the final say, or you're close to it, right? You have a say, and it's valued in such a way that it makes a difference, right? From the decision-making capacity. So a sphere chart helps define boundaries, which helps illuminate responsibilities and relationships. It's a defining thing. It's really good. It takes the blurriness out of your day. So I was brought through this some years ago. Actually, the way it was initially told me was, Lance, everybody has a plot of land, everybody has a house, everybody has a yard, and your yard may not be as big as the next guy's yard, but it's yours, right? And one day it could be bigger, but right now this is yours. And that helped me because then they showed me, this individual showed me, you know, you're at the center of your world, yes, and you have things that are important to you. We all do. So the sphere chart helps you see, here's the areas that I directly influence, here are the areas I impact from an authority standpoint, and ultimately maybe they overlap. Often they do, to be honest with you. But what's nice about it is I do the sphere chart probably from 6 months to, yeah, I do it about every 6 months right now. I was gonna say 6 months to 8 months. And it's helpful for me because it actually shows me where I'm actually growing as a human being. Like, wow, there's a wider range of a sphere that I oversee, which is really cool. It's actually very telling too, because when you actually do this, the last one I did was really, it was hard for me to do because I take it serious, you know, the areas that I'm over, the areas I influence, both in life and in work. And, you know, I lost someone important to me. I lost my mom last year. And she was no longer in my area of influence when I redid my sphere chart because I don't influence her any longer, right? She's moved on. And so that was really a hard time for me because, again, it keeps us honest and it keeps us on point with who we're influencing and who we have authority over. It's an important tool if you so choose to use it. So I'm going to move ahead, guys, and talk about the sphere chart a little bit. And again, if you decide to use it, I think it can be very helpful. So let's go to Johnny Courtmatter. We've talked about Johnny Courtmatter, Johnny New Guy, as he's been known. Johnny Courtmatter, he has moved on, and he is now the GM of Sky City, Orlando, Florida. It's a pretty cool, neat brand. A little bit of influence there. He now has a wife, a kid, and many activities that keep him busy. When not running a park or raising a family, he's focused on items like his extended family, church, the runners club he started, the dojo he participates in, and of course, keeping up on his household chores and auto maintenance, that sort of stuff, right? And here's a note about a sphere chart. You can use color to signify areas of influence and authority. That could be very helpful. Get as detailed as you desire. Choose to revisit this exercise as often as you want. It really does show you where you're growing, where you're shrinking back in areas. It often shows you too where you maybe need to pull away from some things and not be the authority anymore, but just an influence, right? Because again, we're drawing boundaries. There's only one you, right? You got one body, you got one life, and you get to choose how you live that out, right? So here's just a fun little sphere chart I did for Johnny, good old Courtmatter, who we apparently failed to develop to the point of being a GM, but he went on, he took his game to Orlando, Florida to open up the first Sky City. All right, and I hope you can appreciate my mess here, but I'll walk you through it a little bit. So however you decide to look at it, Johnny's made up of however you decide to look at this, mind, body, emotions, will, all the things that make up a human being, right? So Johnny is in the center, and I chose to use red for the areas that he has authority over, and blue actually for the areas of influence. Actually, I might have that flipped. Red is actually his influence, and blue is the areas of authority. So Johnny is over Sky City, Orlando. That's an area that he has a lot of influence in, but he doesn't make all the decisions there. The owners do. He actually doesn't have full authority over the guests, but he has lots of influence over Beth, the manager, Marcus is a manager, Carl, of course, another manager, his leads, his team members. Those are areas that he influences, or he has authority over. I'm sorry. He goes into the dojo. He does martial arts right on the side. He has fellow students. He influences them. He doesn't have authority over them. He has Sensei Julie. That's who oversees it. She has authority over him. And really, he oversees Class A. That's a class that he gets to be a part of. He participates in, but he also sometimes teaches in. So he has authority and he has influence. He's part of the runners union. He created it. He runs for a cause of some sort. He actually oversees it. That's his. He has full authority, and he has a few people who helps him out with it. Heather, Matt, and Roy, they all work underneath him for this runners union. He's over his home. He's over his car and his household chores. He has a wife named Sarah. He has influence over her, and the two of them actually have authority over their son Joel, and so on and so forth. I can go on all the way to Rover and Goldie, his brother, his sister. And you can go as near and as far with this. You can go with the bank teller that you're in front of when you bring your deposit. You can go to the gas station clerk, whoever you want to go with. If you have influence and you want to get that granular, go for it, by all means. If you want to make it more just coarse in nature and more like higher level, do that too. But this is one thing you can do. So this sphere chart, I would say, I did this on October 23rd, and I'm going to revisit this in 6 months to see how I've grown as a person. Okay? Any questions about the sphere chart? Would this be helpful for any of you? Honest take. Would it be something you would adopt and use? I know it's a funny little exercise, but think about it. Putting your life on paper, the real you. Awesome. I'm going to take it. All three said yes, absolutely, in Shelby Township. I appreciate that. All three of yous. Cool, cool, cool. Excellent. Yeah, and there's apps for this too. There's actually apps that build this out. I can share that with whoever's interested. It doesn't have to just be pen and paper. For those that are allergic to sharpening a pencil or using a pen, I get it. It's the day and age we live in, but you can do this in a digital way too, which is pretty cool because then you could actually see some changes there. It's kind of like mind mapping. If you're familiar with mind mapping, I do quite a bit of that too. It's mind mapping, but it's your life on display. It helps you. Creates boundaries, creates borders. It shows you what you're really over. It's the real you. It's good stuff. We'll let you kind of look at that for a little bit longer. I'll share that with whoever's interested. Again, don't be afraid to do something that's a little silly, a little weird. I've never done this before. He wants me to write down causes and work and sports and the things I'm in. Yeah, I do. Because that's the real you. How you show up in one place is how you show up everywhere else. If you're stressed at work, you're probably stressed at home. Just a thought. So we're going to move on here from this section of borders and boundaries and really sphere charts. And I'll just end with this or wrap up with these last couple slides. Are you intentionally coaching those you're leading? Before you answer, yes, slam dunk, I'm doing this. Are you? Are you intentionally coaching those you're leading? And how do you know if you are? I mean, honestly, how do you know if you're doing this? Do you go into your shift going, I have 2 people in mind, I'm going to coach them today. And if you're in Madison, it's going to be Stefan today with 2 people. So we're going to have some fun today, Stefan. Hope you're ready. So yeah, intentionally coaching those you're leading. Are you doing this? It's an opportunity for iron to sharpen iron. It's an opportunity for you to show what you know. It's an opportunity for you to look at your sphere chart and go, this is an area I influence, I have a high say in, and an area also where I have authority, and I actually have the final say. But yeah, go for it, right? You know, we talked about mission at the very top of this discussion, and mission is really important. It's equally important to vision. In fact, I think the quote is something along the lines of like, strategy eats vision for breakfast or something along those lines. I probably botched that quote, but vision and mission are both really important. But at the end of the day, guys, what's behind our professional mission has got to be personal purpose. It has to be. Personal purpose. And as leaders, we influence, we cheerlead, we do it all day. In fact, I almost made this whole thing about cheerleading. Believe it or not, maybe next time. But we do that all day, every day. We cheerlead. We inspire, we influence, we push and we press. And we know when our team is pushed to the brink. But if we're at the brink ourselves, we can't give what we don't have, period. And if you're on empty, What can you give? So here's our time for action, guys, our 5% steps, because that's what we do at Innovative Heights. We are Innovative Heights. We are 5%ers, and that takes action with intentionality. Here's our time for action steps. Do the sphere chart. I'll make it a choice. You want to do it? Awesome. If you don't. You're not here to wow me by any means. But again, if you've never done it, try it. A few extra minutes out of your day. Do a sphere chart. If you're unsure of something about it, let me know. Here's another 5% step. Write out steps for growth. Write them out. What do you want to do? Where do you want to be? Oh, and for the record, write out steps for growth. Who do you need, or what do you need to actually get to where you want to go? Right? Be real about it. Where do you get the source? And then choose two to coach, guys. Choose two to coach. That is something I'm going to expect of each of you. Come back with who you coached, the two you're coaching. Because again, if we are just taking this as theory, as a lost hour in the day, that's what it is, a lost hour in the day. It's not just theory, not just hearing me talk. Because then we'll just stop doing the calls, honestly. It's about growth, it's about development, and it's about being intentional. So choose two to coach for whatever reason. Now, you don't have to go to them, word of warning, don't go to them and be like, I'm coaching you today. I mean, you can, but just be clear that it's not like a who's your favorites list, right? I mean, just be careful on that. But choose two to coach. Be intentional. For whatever reason, you're going to coach these two people. And it could change from day to day, or it could be the same two people on the week. But just be intentional. Again, they're not the superstars necessarily. They're not your favorites list. But just be intentional about coaching. And then come back with your feedback about how it went. Fair? All right, guys. We're at 2 o'clock. What questions do you have for me? Or what are some observations or just reflections you might have? Before I start calling on you. And your black screens of doom won't put me down. I know who's behind those black screens. I know, because I see names. I see names. I see Erica and Aaron and Stephanie.
I can go. I kind of have had started thinking about this last night about people that I wanted to intentionally pull aside, and I actually did it the other day with one of our new managers. So maybe tips for how I can do that better. I just kind of walked around the park with our new manager, and we just talked about, kind of what things I look for. But the bigger conversation I had with her was that, she's going to have an issue because people aren't going to see her as being a manager now. They're going to see her as just being one of them. And when she talks to them and says, hey, I need you to do this, they're going to be like, I'm not doing that. You're not in charge. So we just had to talk about that on, was it Saturday? We kind of walked around and just talked about that a little bit. So, but the other person that I have in mind is somebody that has a lot of leadership qualities, but also has some narcissistic ones as well. Which if he were to ditch those, he probably would be a great leader. But I don't even think, as is the case with most narcissistic people, they don't even realize that they act that way. So, yeah, blinded by it, right? Sure. Yep. You sounded like you were just talking about spheres of influence versus spheres of authority. Yeah. What a surprise. Yeah. A wise man once said, the majority of our gossip, our slander, our toxicity in our workplace has to do with that. Unclear boundaries, blurriness. Did I say I was wise? Yeah, I'll take it. What feedback or questions you guys have? Anyone else?
I'm honestly looking forward to doing the sphere chart, really like taking this time and sitting down and doing that and looking through and actually having my leaders do it as well. And going from there, from that point, and then coaching out. because I know when I originally got back into this park, I had all these coaching opportunities. I wasn't trapped at position a lot as I have been recently. And that was so valuable to this park. And coming out of being trapped, like we're actually getting enough staff and we've got a leadership team and all that. And coming out from, I'm not going to say it's a burden to be locked in, but as a leader, that's not what I'm here to do, is just be locked into a position all the time. So seeing, having that opportunity to like see the broader picture and then execute training out of that every single week and have a plan with it is going to be crucial.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. And I know it's a goofy little Johnny Courtmatter thing, right? I mean, it's kind of goofy in that sense, and a little storyline running behind it. But if anyone's interested, I'd be willing to share kind of how I do my own, just for the sake of, just for brevity, just for the purpose of this call. I didn't want to put it out there for the masses because, I get into the inner workings of just my day to day, my life at large, but I'd be willing to share that. Just to kind of put it in the proper context of like, oh, this is a real human being that I know. And this is how he kind of goes about doing something like this from an exercise standpoint. But it's very helpful. Like I said, and it's not just helpful because I started doing it back in the day when I had like one location, then I had multiple locations. I was like, oh, look at all this expansion and growth, because it doesn't always have to look like quantity. It really needs to look like quality, and it helps kind of hone in on the quality levels behind those engagements. And that's the other thing too, when you're thinking about the two people you're coaching, I know I just kind of moved to the next thing, which was coaching two team members. Look to how you're spending that time with quality levels, right? Not like high quality engagements, not about the quantity. I didn't say 20 people, I said 2, because we want to have high quality engagements. So again, I'm willing to share my sphere chart. You guys have open access to me within the boundaries I set. So I'm willing to set those boundaries with you guys. I'll tell you if you overstep in some way, but please be intentional, because there's something really gross and nasty and not right about just doing the bare minimum. I'll just say that out loud. It's not a good thing if you're just doing the bare minimum. And if just getting on the call is the bare minimum, go a step above that, because it is your development and it's you owning it so you can grow as a leader. Any other questions or observations, thoughts, dreams, prophetic visions, anything? Talk to me. Let's go. Let's do this. I think I'm going to grow a mustache. I'm on my way. I'm going to take that from Seville, some pointers. He has a rad stash. But if you guys got nothing else for me, hopefully this landed well. If you have any questions, again, for like the 15th time, make it 16 now. Guys, phone a friend, reach out to me. I'll help you through it. Fair enough?